least I hope we're going. Good evening. I am Tony Dattino. I'm the founder of the USA Memory Championship, the president of Dattino Consulting Group, and I do a Live with Tony Facebook broadcast underneath the USA Memory Championship umbrella, and we have videos that you can look at that go back in time. But I've been trying to recap what's happening over the last couple of weeks. As we're getting more and more feedback from people that have taken the Maximum Memory Mastery online program. That's Maximum Memory Mastery online program. And what we're hearing more and more about it from people that are going through it is that this is far more than a memory course. And so it's, when we put it together, and Michael put the effort in putting this together, Michael Dattino, who is the chief in charge of the Maximum Memory, our goal was to start taking things that we had learned from running the USA Memory Championship for 21 years and putting it together and offering it to people, because in our annual holding the event, we had hundreds of people asking us if we had training on how we could improve memories, and we didn't. My primary work was Dattino Consulting. I've written a couple of books about the work I do in consulting. One was Brain Smart Leader and then Grassroots Leader. And so Michael had the opportunity of joining the team a few years ago. He put together an online course, Maximum Memory Mastery. At the time, it was more about memory skills and things. But in the front end of it, he talked about what we call brain power and things that people really needed to know about the brain that I had learned from over 20 years of studying the neuroscience of the human mind. And things that I took, that I wrote about in my two books, that I felt people should know about in terms of their own thinking capacities, their own potentials. And so in my consulting work, right, when I go out and teach people, it's all about unleashing the possibilities and getting people to realize there is so much more that we can do with our own abilities and our own innate skills and qualities than we ever thought possible, given the right nurturing and the right environments that would propel those to creating things we never thought possible. And as we've now begun doing some work during COVID-19 online Zooms, we're finding that in the Maximum Memory Mastery, people are grabbing different elements of it and they're finding it to be extremely valuable. And so we're back thinking about, okay, calling it Maximum Memory Mastery is probably not the right title. And when we do live workshops, we call it the Brain Power Series, because we break it up into 4 or 5 segments. So what I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of that background. And then I want to dive into at least a couple of things this evening that kind of wrap up some of the things I've been reading that we've been talking about. And the one that I finished up with last week, and one last piece that I wanted to cover, and this was in the July issue, Alan Alda on the cover of Art Magazine. And I've been taking apart in the work that I've been doing an article on happiness in the hard times. And I've talked about adversity, I've talked about uncertainty. I've been doing a series of these, if you go back and look at the videos, that cover more and more of this. But the thing I found a bit challenging for me, and it was like, wow, this is interesting. And by the way, I don't agree with it. But there was a study done by a university that proposed that we have 304 happy genes. So now they're able to take our brains apart and our bodies apart, and they're able to count off that we have 304 genes that control our happiness. I found that amusing, and also maybe it's just me, but can you believe that there is a scientist in any university, any place on the globe, that can actually count the number of genes that exist in our body and attribute those genes to these are our happiness? I don't know, I found that interesting, because what I've been saying to people for the last 20 plus years is we're not born with a good memory, we're not born with a bad memory. We're born with a brain, and how we go about our lives believing we can't improve our memory very often leads us to not improving our memory. So it's not about the genes in our head that drive our memories and our experiences. It's the nurturing and the actual learning and the skills we build. So when I find that I ask the question to people, do you believe that you can improve your memory? And now I would define you can improve your own brain power as defined by, can you improve your creativity and your ability to innovate? Can you improve your ability to communicate more effectively with people and match intent with action? Do you believe you can do a better job of remembering where you left your car keys or where you left something that was important to you? Can you improve the way you remember people's names and faces? So then when we think about that, and I think of happiness, I think of the work I've done over the last 20 years in the consulting world with what I call helping people change the synergy of their memory traces, their memory patterns, and creating new thoughts and new traces and new experiences. And as a result of doing some work that we are now doing for a school system, I've gone back to students that have been through the memory championship and they've been through their school memory programs. And it's just been amazing to see the results that participating in the memory championship has had on these high school students that are now adults and in their adult careers, and the excitement and the self-confidence that they've gotten from it. So when I think about this article on recounting happiness genes, you know, in my 4-part series last week, we talked about what are things you can do to improve your level of happiness. And the one that keeps coming back, and we beat on this in the maximum memory, is our social ability, our social interactions and connections, and how we bond with people and make connections that build trust, confidence. And so one of the things that people don't often think about is when you remember people's names and faces, it's amazing what a difference that makes in the connection that you can make with them. It's amazing when you can remember a name and face, how you also begin to remember some things about them. And so, you know, we have in our memory competition, we have an event called Names and Faces, and we give the competitors 125 names of people with pictures, and they have to remember them in 15 minutes. It's amazing how well they build the skill of when they meet people in our networking world today, how that's a skill that is so valuable to what people do when they meet others in social groups. And who can remember the most names? Almost, you know, as we've learned through the years, who can remember the most names of people that they meet in social interactions kind of is the person remembered that stands out in a social gathering. So who would normally think about that? And so people laugh and fun, like, how do you do that? Because most people believe that they can't remember names and faces. And therefore, as a result, if you can teach them a few simple things that help them to do that, wouldn't that make them like the being, the center of social interaction, and make them the person that you're talked about? So I've tried this during holiday seasons when we're going out and we're meeting with people at different social interactions. It would have been barbecue time here, 4th of July, if we weren't isolated, and making it a point of just remembering some of the names of people that I get to meet, and then being able to bounce around in a social environment and talk to different people, and then go back to folks I was talking to earlier and start with calling them by their first name. And you don't need to go second name, just first name would be enough to get most people to be wowed and amazed. And here's a skill that we all should be practicing and we can all improve on, because more and more of the science continues, and our happiness world told us, connecting with people and starting to connect with people, how about remembering their name and how we identify who they might be? And so who would ever stop to think about, gee, what are all of the implications of being able to remember a person's name and their face? And I always remember one of our participants in the Memory Championship was a student out of University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And I always remember, he said, God, when I go to frat parties, and remembering the names of the females and the girls that I meet at those, it just blows them away. And by the way, it's helped me get a few extra dates from people that that I met at these frat parties that they just couldn't believe. And so I was like the talk of the party, and how I was remembering so many different names of people I met at it. And what he was doing was using one of the skills that we have in our Maximum Memory Mastery online course. So we're thinking about changing the name of it into what we call the Brain Power Series. It's got a lot more in it than just how do you improve your memory skills. And what I've said to people is we've put bonus material in the back end of it from some of the things that I've done on my broadcasting. And those in itself are invaluable in what we've included in the back end of the workshop with my brain-to-brain communication. People tell me 45 minutes of that alone is just worth the whole course. So anyway, these are some of the things we're working on. We're also trying to see where we're going with our USA Memory Championship in October. We're seeing what's going on now in the Northeast, up at MIT, Harvard, and the universities up in the Boston, Cambridge area. And we're trying to reset. And we're also thinking of how might we do something using Zooms or webinars or webinars or whatever we can do. How can we keep the people that are interested in advancing what's up here, how do we keep that alive? So that's another project that we're working on. So this is my Monday, 7 p.m. broadcast. I'll be back on tomorrow, Tuesday afternoon, in the 3 o'clock time period. And until you see me again tomorrow, have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.